Hi all, this is part 2 of the 2010 Cry of Fear beta video that I promised I'd put out about 2 weeks ago. First thing we're going to cover is some of the stuff that I happened to get wrong in the original video. So the first thing that I got kind of wrong, or I guess it's only slightly altered, is the cutscene after the nightmare sequence where the hands are grabbing at Simon's feet. In the release of the game, the cops show up and they're investigating the crime scene after Simon gets hit by the car. But in the beta, there's the little jump scare or whatever with the Dreamer. The next thing that I got wrong was the cutscene where Simon jumps back into the window after the Carcass boss fight. I totally forgot that that does exist in the game, but it only happens if you happen to run away from Carcass, and not if you both fight and or run away from him. This is a detail I totally got wrong, but the apartment psychologist, and it has no meaning in the full game whatsoever, but that does exist in the final game. It's just a detail I never happened to notice. I also showed off a room right before the first little nightmare sequence with the hands as well. I thought it was an extra room with the tape recorder and whatnot. No, it turns out it's just a little bug where the room wraps around and you re-enter the entrance of that room where the gate pops up and it's all barred off and whatnot. So the first actual differences I'll cover is the weapons that do exist in the beta. For example, the hunting rifle exists, but it's not in the park where you normally find it. You have to spawn it in. And the same thing with the flare. It doesn't exist in the section where you normally find the flares, but you can spawn them in and they're totally functional. The hunting rifle is also interesting because it's got a missing texture, and weapons that have a special function, like the Glock tac light or the M16 where you can change the fire mode. All of that is done by pressing right click instead of Z, which is really interesting. Another thing I really found unique that I didn't actually see in my first go through is the flashlight. You can move it around with your mouse and point it at different parts of the screen, which I think is really cool. It's useless, but it's really cool. Alright, so this next section is going to be like all of the music and stuff that I could find. So there is a Cry of Fear beta playlist on YouTube that you can find, but I wasn't able to find a majority of the songs on there in this beta. So I'm not sure where they got them from. I don't know if it comes from an older version of the beta or what. But I did find a couple differences in the tracks that do exist in the release, and otherwise I'll show off a little bit of snippets from the stuff I did find. Alright, I'm gonna give y'all a timestamp to skip for this one, because this one is fucking loud. Holy shit. This I kind of like this one. It's insane, and I kind of wish they would have left this in the game because it's intense. But yeah, no, I'm gonna leave a timestamp so y'all can skip ahead. And forewarning, it is extremely loud. wakey, hope you weren't trying to fall asleep to this video, because that for sure would have woke you up. Nah, this next one, though, I really like. It comes from Start 2, and it's, I don't know why they cut this one. It's also another good one. So that's all the tracks I could find in the beta that were cut. Like I said, some of the tracks in the release are slightly different here, but it seems like they're mostly just shorter and not really worth putting in. Others are just ambience and other non-interesting things I didn't feel were worth putting in the video. But copy of Intro, however, did wind up becoming the game over theme in the final release. So here's where I pause real quick, and I mentioned the screenshot I used for this section. It comes from the RTX Remix project that I've been working on for this game. My partner and I, Toyotek, have been hard at work getting it up off the ground. He's done all of the coding work thus far on top of picking up the slack from me on textures, and he's been recreating models while I've been setting up everything in the toolkit itself and doing lighting work for now. We've also enlisted the help of the developer of Morphine Launcher, Vic Rattlehead, who's going to make a launcher specifically for Cry of Fear Remixed. Now, real quick, if you haven't heard of Morphine Launcher, it's incredible. It has a bunch of quality of life features, and it's pretty much the entire reason we're able to play Cry of Fear on Windows 11 nowadays. Otherwise, if you're interested in helping out with the project, we need people familiar with graphics coding, coding in C, and texturing/model work. Feel free to reach out to me on Reddit, as I'll leave that in the description, and I'll get you a friend link so you can get at me on Discord. Otherwise, if you just want to check out and follow up on the project, you can do so in the RTX Remix Discord and on my Reddit page. I hopefully plan to have an actual demo video recorded here soon, but I'll put in a snippet of the first area to show it off in this video as a showcase.
Did I get here?
So that's the project that's been taking up my time. If you're interested, you can always check it out on the RTX Remix Discord, or you can check out my Reddit, and I'll be making posts about it every now and then. Alright, so now for this next section, I'll be talking about whatever interesting models I could find, stuff that was cut, unused, blah 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 blah, and some interesting map stuffs that I found. Alright, so this first one is the old Simon model, and he's like waking up. I think this one might have been used in like the intro or something in the past. And then this next model seems to be Simon like beating a wall or doing something out of frustration. Not entirely sure on this one. And then this next one is like a box of 45 ammo, and I think this would have been used for the M76 that was cut from the game. If not, it's used for the P345. Alright, and then this next one is the old model for the children with the bag covering their head, and then there's another one that's labeled Children's Scare that I think would have been used for a jump scare at some point. It's got like one of them climbing up and then doing the old twitcher thing. And then this one is a model of some electrical tape. I don't know where this would have been used. Your guess is as good as mine, but I think it's pretty interesting. And here's the old faceless model. I didn't realize this before, but it's got like a different facial structure. It's got a really long jaw on top of having a lighter texture. This one was documented before by the cutting room floor, but here's the male Faster killing Simon. I think this is the original Faster model too, before the female one was ever a thing. This one is a corpse holding onto the flashlight. I think you would have obtained it similarly to the Glock, where you would have found it off somebody's corpse. Here's the old shotgun guy model. He's got a little bit of different clothing than he does in the release, and you can see the old shotgun model here as well. Here's the guy that stands over Simon in the intro of the game after he gets hit by the car. He's got a little, his neck is a little bit screwed up. Now these ones aren't really interesting, but I think there would have been like a hospital section similar to Afraid of Monsters and Cry of Fear at some point. So I have no idea how they would have been using this one, but this just seems to be like a little texture slash model they made to show hammer units. So this is the couch model with like a screwed up texture. The couch is all messed up. Now these next two are the old Simon models. So we got the like model that was used in this beta for certain cutscenes and some stuff, and then we got the older one way back from like the 2008 beta that's still in the files, which is really cool. And then I'm not going to include every Simon model, but I thought this one was interesting because this is like an unused cutscene, it seems. He's walking past and he looks at something. I'm not entirely sure how this would have been used, but I think it's pretty neat. Now this one's probably one of my personal favorites because the old slower models are pretty interesting. And I think this is pretty common knowledge to anybody who's into the beta stuff for this game, but there used to be a headshot mechanic for the slowers where you could explode their heads with a headshot. It doesn't exist in this beta, but the headless slower model still exists, so that's pretty cool. So this one I thought was kind of interesting too. Here's the slower with player animations. I don't think they ever meant for you to play as the slower. Maybe they did, who knows? But it also uses the face textures of the crawling slowers. Last but definitely not least, anybody who like keeps up with beta stuff on this game knows about this, but the M76 was cut, and the model for it actually exists in this beta. I tried spawning it in, it wasn't coded in yet, so yeah, there's that. Now Now on to some map things. So I only included 2 of the subway maps in this, but I did find some pretty interesting things inside them. So this first one, this door that gets locked by Purnell that normally takes the fuses, it's locked by the blue line key instead, which doesn't exist in the release. And then this next one, unfortunately, has to be a couple screenshots. It's supposed to be a conveyor, but I tested it out in game and it doesn't work in game. But it says in the full thing, due to a fatality on the rails, the 2315 is delayed, and I think it's related to the suicide note, one of the ones I showed off in the last video, where it mentions I think it's Simon talking about wanting to throw himself in front of a train. And then this is the last kind of interesting map change thing I could think of off the top of my head. Instead of jumping on a box, you used to jump on a ladder from the train that's gonna like run you over. Otherwise, there's like graffiti and other small things that aren't really worth showing off. There's not too many changes in the maps that I could find actually, even looking through them with BSP guy. So I almost forgot, and I'm glad I remembered. There's the video stress test that exists in this beta, and it lets you disable or enable a bunch of the effects that came with the game. Alright, so last but definitely not least is the interesting images that I found in the files as well. This first one mentions a console of some sort. Now, I don't know if this would have been like the way to enter the developer console without pressing tilde or what, but I thought this stuck out to me. So these next 2 are related to the multiplayer back in the beta. So the first one is related to how to set up port forwarding, and then the next one is settings that I guess you used to be able to change before entering the game. Alright, so I'm going to do these 2 at a time, but these are the actual messages from the notepad files that I showed in the last video, with the exception of the third one, which we'll get into in a second. That one's a little bit different, and it's missing the racial slur that it had in the last one. This is also the note that I was talking about when I was mentioning the whole the train being shut down for the fatality on the rails or whatever. I think this note is related to that. And then these last 2 aren't really interesting. Like I said, the third one's a little bit different though, a little bit more innocent. And then I also forgot to mention earlier, the flashlight doesn't take batteries in this beta, but at some point it seemed like it did, similar to Afraid of Monsters. And it looks like the M9 from Afraid of Monsters was also ported to Cry of Fear at some point as well, but got cut out. Doesn't exist in this beta though. Now, there are more of these little UI boxes specifically for the weapons. I'm not going to cover them all because they're not all that interesting unless, you know, people really want me to make a part 3 of this, but I think I've been pretty thorough on everything thus far. So, I mean, I'll do a part 3 if people really want to see, like, everything, but I don't think it's interesting enough to throw into this, especially since we're already almost at 30 minutes. Alright, and the very last 2 beta concerning things that I have to show in this video are some of the backgrounds that I mentioned that I was going to throw together and post on the subreddit in my last video that I never got to, but I did it for this video, so here we are. This first one's kind of interesting. It's just a little black background, a little bit of texture, but the second one I think is really cool because it's got like this road and whatnot. Alright, so that's all I've got for now. Like I said, if people really want it, I'll show off the last little things like the item icons and all of that fun stuff, but they've been discussing it in an admittedly much better video. You can look up the lost and cut content of Cry of Fear, and the video will be by Silent Archives, and you can see some of the stuff there and other stuff that wasn't even in this beta, which is super interesting. One thing I plan on doing in the future is like a playthrough retrospective type series where I play through the game, talk about the areas I like, and discuss things I enjoy about the game as I go through it. And then I'll ask again if you're interested in helping with the things I described with our RTX Remix project, like coding or texture work, making models, stuff like that. We'd really appreciate it. And you can just get a hold of me on my Reddit that I'll leave in the description, and then I can get you a friend invite to my Discord. Otherwise, if you just want to follow up on the project, you can follow me on Reddit, or you can join the RTX Remix Discord, and you can find our section under the Remix Projects channel, and then you'll find our little Cry of Fear Remix tab there. And I've been pretty consistent on sending screenshots and showing stuff off as we work on it there. One of the last things I want to mention is if you haven't heard about it before, I literally cannot recommend Morphine Launcher enough. Vic has done an amazing job with it because it lets you set custom resolutions higher than 1920 by 1080. It has an add-on menu, and there's a lot of cool features he's working on currently. And I think people in the community will really appreciate them. So I'd really appreciate it if you give him some support and check it out. Last but not least, I'd like to thank you for almost 30 minutes of your time. This video actually took a lot of effort to make and a lot of time, so I'd normally hesitate to ask this, but if you enjoyed, please leave a like, a comment, and if anything I'm working on sounds interesting to you, I'd appreciate a subscribe as well. This is my video's conclusion. This is my video's end. Farewell, everyone.